Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakaruttam pravaram muninaam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. So we will continue our discussion on the 18th Sutra of Sadhanapada. So here you can get a very wonderful description of what we are, not in the spiritual sense, but in the sense that we live. I said earlier, we had two dimensions. One is the psychophysical dimension, that the intellectual, psychophysical, and the spiritual. So, here is a definition of what the objective universe is, of which we are a part. Prakasha kriya sthiti sheelam bhudendriyatmakam bhoga pavargartham drishyam. So, it's a definition of drishya, or the objective universe. We have to remember the cause of suffering, according to Patanjali, is the association of the seer and the seen. As a seer, we are the Atman, the consciousness, the witness, the eternal unchanging subject, which is by its very nature harmonious, serene, peaceful, without any change. But when we associate with objective universe, when we go through different objective experiences, by seeing things, by hearing things, by interacting with the objective experiences, we forget this true nature of ours, and we identify ourselves with the emerging objective experiences. Now, in a way, there are two approaches in Buddhism, Yoga and Vedanta. As an introduction to the next subject, I will explain this. Now, in Buddhism, especially in the Mahayana Buddhism, where they emphasize the concept of mindfulness or the eternal witness, what Vedanta calls Sakshi, the eternal subject. When they focus on the momentariness of various objective phenomena, and when they keep in mind this fact of transitoriness or momentariness, or the non-eternal nature of this ever-changing phenomenal universe, we are able to stop this identification. So we consider ourselves to be a huge platform where all these objective experiences are appearing and disappearing and reappearing. So naturally, this sort of meditation enables us to practice a degree of non-attachment. And the moment you practice non-attachment, your anxieties or worries are over. This is the psychological description of witnessship, which is originally found in the Upanishadic concept of the Atman as the Sakshi, the witness. Now, when you consider yourself to be the witness and not a participant, then the problem is over. You may buy a ticket for $100 and witness a drama, and it may be a Greek tragedy or something like Othello or anything of the kind, any tragic drama. To do justice to the money you spend, you have to appreciate it For some time, or if you're in a movie, you have to believe for some time this tragedy is true. If you always remember when you see the drama, it's only drama, then it's no use paying the money, is waste. For 3 hours at least, when you watch the movie, you have to remember that you have to forget that this is a movie. Or you may have to delude yourself into thinking that it's real, this is for the real. But then, you won't be affected by that. You may appreciate the genius of the actor who could produce in you the illusion that it is for real. And then only he gets an award, if he succeeds in deluding you. But then it doesn't improve, it doesn't cause any hypertension by BP or nothing happens. When because there is always an element of remoteness. It's a terrible tragedy that is going on the stage. And you appreciate the actor's genius. Terrible things happening. But you are actually enjoying. And you enjoy only when you forget for a moment that it's only a drama. Then only you can do justice to the money you are spending. But then, it won't really cause any inner suffering. If a person who is watching a drama or movie really suffers, then something wrong with him. So it is not real suffering. An element of witnessship is always there, even when you witness this drama. Suppose we can assume this attitude, this perspective in our own life, watching our own life as a drama going on the stage, with a degree of detachment, then you can act in this drama of your own life, but also you can be a spectator. Because spectatorship enables you to detach yourself from the problems. At the same time, because in your own life you are the actor, so we have to do all the work, all the responsibilities, everything. But at the same time, it won't affect you. This is the psychological explanation of the Mahayana Buddhism. Is called subjective idealism. It is sometimes called Vijnanavada or Shunya. Vijnanavada is called the Yogacara system, which is the second most profound system of Buddhist philosophy after the doctrine of emptiness, which is called Shunyavada. There have been many great thinkers, Asanga, Dignaga, Vasubandhu, Chandrakirti, any number of them, who wrote very profound philosophical books, texts between the 1st century and 4th century. On this particular school of Mahayana Buddhism, it's called subjective idealism, Vijnanavada, Shunyavada. In fact, it started evolving right from the 2nd century BC onwards. That's about 350 years after the passing away of Buddha. Now, the same method is employed in Vedanta with a slight difference. In Vedanta also, this is the essence of a really spiritually enlightened person. The verse in the Gita it comes in the 4th chapter, 18th verse of the Gita, Karmani akarmaya pasyed akarmani cha karmayaka sa buddhiman manusheshu sa yukta krishna karmakrit. Now here, there is a beautiful definition, a description of who is the really intelligent person in this world. Intelligent in a very spiritual sense. Who is a yogi. Yukta means yogi. Buddhiman means really spiritually enlightened person, intelligent person. Krishna Karma, the 3 names given here, mean the one who does everything. Still remaining in a state of perfect non-attachment. This is called a kind of witnessship. Of course, these ideas in Gita emerged at least 3 millennia before Buddhism emerged. So the meaning of the verse is this. The one who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is the really intelligent person, the truly enlightened spiritual man or woman, and is the real yogi. Yoga here doesn't mean physical yoga, but the highest yoga philosophy. It really means Vedantic philosophy. And is the real actor. Now this needs some explanation. There are two elements here. You should be able to feel that you are not really active when you are busy, you are always working. Now how does this happen? Normally when we work hard, physically or mentally, we work, when we walk, when we run, we work with our feet and mind. When we do things with our hands and mind are engaged. So, in all these actions, the senses of action, the senses of perception, and mind are always engaged. When you hear something, ears and mind. When you smell something, the sense of smell and mind. When you touch something, the sense of touch and mind. Like that. Now, who is really acting here? Who is really engaged in action? Who is the I or who is the you engaged in action? Is the real I this physical body or that intellectual psychophysical mechanism? Then you answer you are really active. But according to Vedanta, you are able to do things with your mind, intellect and senses of perception and senses of action only because the Atman, the consciousness, manifests in you. Then only you are able to do things. Then only we are able to think about things, to work intellectually or mentally or physically. The Atman itself is, by its very nature, not engaged in action. The senses and mind are engaged in action. And mind also has the status of a refined sense in Vedanta. The mind is just a material substance in Vedanta. Through mind, when Atman manifests, immediately the mind becomes active. It becomes capable of thinking, speculating, imagining, and so on. So, Atman is really not acting. Only Indriyas, or what you call senses, and mind or intellect, are engaged in their own respective activities. Indriyani indriyartheshu vartanda iti dharayan. This is the attitude of a yogi according to Gita. These senses are really engaged. Well, my feet are engaged while walking. And mind also, of course. Now, if one can really, at least intellectually pursue oneself, well, the real I is not this physical, psychophysical mechanism. The real I is the all-pervading consciousness, the soul, the self within, the divine reality within, which is omnipresent, which is immanent. So if one can keep this in mind, then one will be able to see and experience inaction even while being engaged in action. In fact, it is possible for one to be terribly active even when you are doing nothing. I gave the example some time back. Suppose you are caught in a traffic jam. There is a long queue, long line of vehicles at the back and also forward, and you can't reach your destination on time. So naturally you start cursing the traffic, cursing the road conditions, and so it could happen. You can work yourself up to such a level of tension and exhaustion and fatigue that your BP can go up, pressure can go up, many things could happen without really doing anything. So, at the same time, even in the midst of all these activities, physical, mental, intellectual activities, if one can link himself or herself to this transcendental spiritual dimension of his own, her own personality, then even while being engaged in action, one can remain in a sense of serenity, in an atmosphere of serenity, peace and calm and quietude. This is the technique of seeing inaction in action. So here also the same effect. Through meditation, you learn to look upon various objective experiences as a witness is witnessing things happening on a stage without real attachment, so you can feel serenity and peace within even while being engaged in action. This is a good meditation technique. Here you link yourself to your spiritual dimension, to the Atman. So that helps you to remain in a state of quietude and serenity, even in the midst of activities. Now, seeing action in action, there is a simple point. Suppose we are keeping quiet, we are lying, we are relaxing on an easy chair without doing any work. We say, well, I'm keeping quiet, I'm not doing anything. But actually there also, when we say that I'm not doing anything, the real I here means this psychophysical mechanism, which is not really the truth. The real I is of Atman, consciousness that goes beyond the psychophysical mechanism. So how can it be in a state of inaction? So a state of inaction really means withdrawal from action. Withdrawal of action is possible only if there is action to begin with. So a state of transcending both action and inaction, being in a state of perfect witnessship, or it is called a state of witnesshood. Sakshitvam it is called. This is the real significance of going beyond this association of seer and the seen. In the 18th verse, after describing the real cause of suffering, which is, of course, already in the earlier verse, it was explained that the real cause of suffering is the association of the seer with the seen, with the subject, with the objects. In the 18th verse, there is a beautiful description of what this external universe is. That is, the drishyam is the external universe. So he explained here. So drishya is nothing but, it is activity and inertia, illumination. So there are three qualities: prakasha, kriya, sthiti. Prakasha means sattva guna. Normally, I shall try to explain this: sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. Three levels of human, we can say human refinement, cultural, psychological state of human mind: sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. So prakasha means illumination. Sattva guna is always of the nature of light, knowledge, serenity, and action with serenity. If action is associated with extreme fatigue, ambition, and other problems that come in that train, then that condition is rajoguna and tamoguna combination. But if action is accompanied by an extreme sense of calmness and quietude, you can find any spiritual teacher, because they have linked themselves to this higher spiritual dimension. So, and the characteristic of sattva-guna is that's called prakasha. Prakasha means in nature of illumination. Kriya means action. Action not with serenity. Action with extreme zeal, enthusiasm. When people work hard, make lot of money, lot of attachment, lot of zeal, enthusiasm, efficiency, workaholism, professionalism, and also by hypertension, BP, diabetes, and anxiety, neurosis, depression, everything, all this going together. This is called rajoguna, means it is called kriya. There is no karma yoga here, only karma. See, sometimes, perfectionism in action is not karma yoga, it is only karma. When the sattva element comes in, then you join karma with yoga, then becomes karma yoga. Otherwise, it is only karma or action, perfection, and of course, a lot of attachment and accompanying problems. Sthiti means tamoguna, state of inertia. There are certain people, if they may not do anything, nidra alasya pramadoktam tat tamasam udakritam. That is the classical definition of what tamoguna inertia is. Sleepishness means ignorance, inertia, laziness. And also strong conviction which are all wrong. Obsessive convictions, ideas which are totally the opposite of the real. So all these constitute tamoguna. Plus the 5 elements, I shall explain this in Vedanta and Yoga, 5 fundamental elements, which is called Panchabhutani, some of you must have heard. Prithvi, Apat, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha, which is in English earth, water, fire, air, and ether or space. These are the 5 elements which constitutes the 5 elements, which have got 2 dimensions, 2 aspects. The primary, Sukshma Bhutani, means the causal dimension, which is called Panchatanmatras, and the gross, which is called Sthula Bhutani, which constitute the entire universe. So Vedanta and Yoga, and also Sankhya and Yoga, all these 3 systems of philosophy, Vedanta, Yoga and Sankhya, they all accept this fundamental principle. The entire creation universe is constituted by 5 fundamental principles or elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space, or it's called ether. The permutations and combinations of all these 5 elements constitute the entire creative, objective universe. That's the central principle. Now, all these constitute drishyam. We need a little more explanation, of course. In fact, our mind, our senses of perception, senses of action, all this also part of this objective universe, this external nature. Our hand is nothing but a part of this dead universe, except when the consciousness manifests through this hand. Our mind is nothing but dead matter. Unless the consciousness, the Atman, manifests through mind, then you are able to discover wonderful secrets of nature. Then you are able to become philosopher, scientist, artist, and so on. When the Atman, the consciousness, manifests through mind, when the same Atman manifests through intellect, then intellect is able to speculate, philosophize, analyze things, and people are able to make great contributions to philosophy, art, or literature when the Atman manifests through these senses. And depending upon the quality, the purity, or its opposite of this reflecting media, which are all the senses and mind and intellect, the results can be produced. Now, there is a very interesting description of the real function of Sattva-guna, Rajo-guna, and Tamo-guna in the Sankhya Karika. As I mentioned earlier, Sankhya philosophy is the philosophical aspect of yoga. Yoga emphasizes the practical, the spiritual practices, the mental discipline, which are all required to realize our true nature. But these philosophical aspects are borrowed from Sankhya philosophy, which is supposed to be one of the 2 oldest philosophical systems like Vedanta. The earliest Sankhya ideas are found in books written around 3000 BC or even earlier. Now, there is a description of these 3 gunas in Sankhya Karika, which is really the original source of this particular sutra. You have to find 18th sutra of the 2nd pada. That means prakasha, kriya, sthiti shilam, bhudendriyatmakam, bhogapavargartham drishyam. So guna is mentioned here because guna will be explained again in the 19th verse. So the verse is this: Sattvam laghu prakashikamishtam upashtambhagam guru varanameva tamapradeepavaccha arthado vritti. This is the verse. It's a very interesting description. It needs some explanation. What is the sattva guna? So now, for those who are not familiar with these terms, I shall give a brief, simple introduction of what sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. Guna, let us say guna means our characteristics, our inherent tendencies, impressions, what we would do if by our own nature. Let us say, suppose you are in a room surrounded by a number of books, magazines, papers, TV, computers, and so on. Nobody is watching you. What book will you choose for yourself? Suppose you are alone in this world. There is nobody else, and you know you are the only person. What would you like to do by your inherent, natural tendency? There is always a difference between what we do as a part of our own natural inborn tendency and what we would like others to see us doing. There's a fundamental difference. There should not be any difference. If there is no difference, then we will become saints. At the normal level, there is always a difference between what we would rather do, prompted by our own natural tendency, and what we would like others to believe that we are doing. This is what actually our inherent nature. This nature, these inherent tendencies and characteristics are analyzed in the light of a classification in the Sankhya, Yoga and Vedanta systems of philosophy. You find this in Buddhist tradition also. The Sattva, Rajo, Tamo Guna. You find, in fact, this you find in all religious traditions. Well, I can give an example from Christian theology. Is the city of God of St. Augustine. The city of God is nothing but a description of the sattvic dimension of human nature, in contrast to city of evil. What sometimes we call in Sanskrit Daivi Sambad means the naturally good, inherently good tendencies, which are of the nature of, which are lightness, knowledge, from a subjective psychological point of view, perfect serenity and peacefulness. But that serenity and peacefulness do not mean that you are inactive. Even in the midst of activity, you are able to keep this serenity. That is the real characteristic of Sattva Guna. A person who is established in Sattva Guna will not be inactive or lazy. He will be capable of doing tremendous work. But there's a difference between a person who does a lot of work with a strong motive and drive and push and ambition and set goal, and a person who does the same, maybe much more work, but perfect calmness and serenity and quietude. That is Sattva Guna. Now, and Rajo Guna is different. Rajo Guna is of the nature of extreme action with extreme attachment, with a strong motive, with a definite goal. There is no serenity. And Tamoguna, on the other hand, is the absence of action and also absence of serenity, peacefulness, or knowledge. Because it consists of laziness, sleepishness, and inaction, and inertia and ignorance. These are all the characteristics of Tamoguna. Now, they all together constitute this universe and also human nature. The world, the cosmic existence, the microcosm, the intercosmic, the universal existence, and also our subjective microcosm, our own inner nature. Both are constituted by a permutation, combination, intermingling of these three apparently different and mutually contradictory characteristics. Now, Sankhya gives an interesting example. How do you explain these contradictory characteristics intermingling and creating the external world and also our own internal subjective mental world in which we live? So, it gives the example of fire, oil, and wicks. An old example. Now, you want light. So, for that, you need a lamp, you need oil, and then you need wick, which is made of cotton. So, there is no similarity between the oil and the cotton, the wick made from cotton or maybe anything. But then fire. So these three are apparently mutually contradictory. But then they together produce one result, that is the light. So the Sankhya philosopher, his name is Ishvara Krishna, who wrote the Sankhya Karika, which is the only available text, the oldest available text on this philosophy, because many of these books were destroyed and they are, the oldest of Sankhya texts are not available. So this is the oldest and right now the most authentic among the available texts on Sankhya. It's Ishvara Krishna's, it's called Sankhya Karika. So this is how the world exists. This is the objective universe. Now, once we understand this objective universe for what it is, then we will be able to live in this objective universe, but be able to differentiate between us and the objective universe. The objective universe is only drishyam, or the seen, or the experienced. And we are the drashta. You'll find that drashta is, or the witness, the subject, the experiencer, the seer, are described in the coming sutras in the same text. Okay, now we'll come to the 19th sutra, which again is a continuation of the description of the objective universe. So I think it's clear. Maybe a few more words may need some explanation. Prakasha, Kriya, Sthiti. Prakasha means Sattva Guna. Kriya corresponds to Rajo Guna. Sthiti means corresponds to Tamo Guna. Rajo Guna in actual life, when it manifests in our character, it corresponds to knowledge, serenity, not inaction, but action with perfect serenity and peacefulness. As I already explained the witness concept in Buddhism and Vedanta. In Vedanta it's called Sakshi. There's an interesting description of what a witness is in Vedanta. So bodhrutvat. So one is that a person who considers himself to be witness, he should be aware, he should be established in a state of knowledge, awareness, and conscious knowledge, perfect consciousness. Then audasinyatva means, but that person should not be attached to what is going on. I can give you an example. Who is a witness? In a drama or even in a crime, a participant in the action cannot be a witness. And a person who was not present there cannot be a witness. So bodhrutva means a sakshi or witness should be aware. He should have the knowledge. He should be fully aware of what he is talking about. At the same time, he should not be part of it. So these two important elements are to be understood in this concept of witnessship in Vedanta. In a way, it applies to Buddhism also. You should be established in a state of perfect awareness, but that awareness is associated with perfect non-attachment. Then only you can become a witness, a sakshi. This is the real nature of Sattva-guna. We can see the whole world if you observe people. You can see the whole humanity can be divided into these three categories. Those who are endowed with predominant characteristic of Sattva-guna, and those who are a dominant aspect of Rajoguna, and those who have a dominant aspect of Tamoguna. Vedantic texts give us a clue as to how to increase or to get established in Sattva-guna. The yoga, Patanjali doesn't deal with that particular aspect. So Vedanta gives a very interesting, very simple method of ascending, evolving to higher and higher levels of Sattva-guna. And one important point that Vedanta makes is this: it is not a matter of our choice. Sometimes, we feel, well, I don't want to do that because I want to be established Sattva-guna. It's a bit Tamoguna, so I don't want to do that. Really, it is not possible. It's not that we can choose. Our own true nature, our own true characteristics, we cannot really control beyond a limit. As I mentioned many times earlier, you can predict with a high level of certainty how a complex machine is going to function. Because the machine borrows its intelligence from you. When you switch on, it works. The most complicated computer, you can very well predict how it is going to function next moment. But you can never be sure how your own mind is going to function next moment. In the sense, you can never be sure what is going to be your next flash of thought in your own mind. You can predict how we are going to function at the concrete gross level, at the level of the senses. See, whether you are going to eat an apple or orange, it is your option, your choice. Whether you are going to walk to the south or north, you can decide. But what thought is going to emerge in your own mind, there is no predict. You cannot predict. And Sattva-guna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna, these three characteristics are related to our state of mind. So, Vedanta says, try to give a spiritual, a sattvic orientation. Sattvic can be, it's an adjective of Sattva-guna, so it's not a Sanskrit. So, a sattvic orientation, a Sattva-guna orientation to whatever we do at the concrete level, at the gross level. So try to do good things. And if you try to do good things, you find you also will develop the habit of thinking good thoughts. And then we also will develop the habit of speaking good words. So you find our actions at the gross level, at the sensory level, will slowly influence the way our mind is functioning. Just as mind influences our actions, so actions also influence the mind. Mind decides how we are going to act. That is true. But conscious effort to do good deeds will help us to develop the habit of thinking good thoughts. So this way, this method will help us to ascend and evolve further to more and more sattvic dimension of our personality. This is what the Vedanta philosophy prescribes. So, for example, Jnanendriyas mean the senses of the five organs of knowledge, sight, the sense of sight, sense of hearing, of smelling, of tasting and touch. 5 senses of knowledge. 5 senses of action. The organs of speech, the organs of hands, feet, excretory organs and all other, whatever karmendriyas. Whatever we are trying to work with our mind or with the senses of action or senses of perception. All these can be given a spiritual orientation. So that will help you to climb the steps to higher and higher level in an ascending order, to reach a higher and higher level of Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna cannot be developed by willpower. It can only be developed by working on the structure of our own mind. And the first step is to give a concrete spiritual orientation to our gross activities. And that will develop into more and more subtle characteristics, like good thoughts, and that will make us more sattvic. This is the Vedantic method in developing Sattva Guna. And then, of course, Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna. So now we'll come to the 19th verse. 19th sutra is Vishesha Avishesha Lingamatra Alingani Guru Parvani. This means here. The translation, if you read the simple translation, perhaps it may not make the meaning clear. So there are these words here: Vishesha, Avishesha, Lingamatra, Alinga, Alingani, Guru Parvani. What are the different states of the 3 gunas? I mean, Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, Tamo Guna. So Vishesha could be called diversified. Avishesha is opposite, undiversified. Then Lingamatra, you will explain this. It's a technical sutra which needs explanation. Lingamatra means Mahat Buddhi, will explain that, indicator. And then that without any indication, these are the stages of gunas. In other words, this particular sutra describes the 4 divisions of the external world, external universe, and also our own inner inherent mental structure, our true character. Now, if we understand the true nature of these 3 gunas, we'll be able to understand where we stand. Sometimes when we have a tendency to do certain things which may not necessarily be good, if we keep this in mind, it can help us to give a positive spiritual orientation, direction to whatever we are going to do. So we'll describe this later. It needs a long description because the terms themselves may not really mean much unless you listen to the commentary and interpretation. So I shall elaborately deal with this subject in the next class. Now we will have interaction. So we can ask any doubts. As we go through the sutras, one advantage is we can go through the original text of Patanjali with the commentaries written on Patanjali's system by thinkers and scholars of his own times and also the later centuries. Now we will have interaction. It need not necessarily relate to what we discussed here. Anything? Come on.
Swamiji, with the gunas, I understand that you're emphasizing that we want to emphasize sattva guna in our life. But I would assume for the world to work, we need rajas and tamas, right? So is it just that for spiritual life, we want to try to just go more towards sattva, or do we want to harness the rajas and tamas, or how does the rajas and tamas come with spiritual life?
Yes. So Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna, the 2 lower levels, or Sattva-guna, they all depend upon our own mental perspective. So, actions by themselves play a very minor role, insignificant role in deciding whether your action, your mind is sattvic or otherwise. I give the example of a great teacher in Mahabharata. He was a professional butcher. Every day he used to come to the market, cut the animals and sell the meat. So practically he was engaged in violence every day. And he is one of the greatest teachers in the Mahabharata. There's a long dialogue between him and a mendicant who have left all these social obligations behind, went to a forest and meditated for long years. That mendicant is learning the highest spiritual philosophy from a professional butcher. If you read that, you will understand he was doing his duty. But his duty for him was only a means for the subsistence, for his livelihood. So sometimes, even while apparently engaged in externally good actions, we could be very rajasic or tamasic. Once when I was in New York, one gentleman asked me a question on more or less the same topic. He asked me, how can anybody be established in Sattva-guna without becoming a vegetarian? So I gave the answer. Hitler was a vegetarian. Buddha and Jesus were non-vegetarians. Do you think Hitler was a sattvic person and Jesus and Buddha were tamasic, rajasic persons? So you find, it's very interesting. So if you read the Mahabharata, you get a clear insight into the true nature. It is the way we look at things that decides whether we are sattvic or otherwise. But remember, that teacher had himself practiced a lot of meditation during his early years. Vyadha is the name. In fact, there's a dialogue between a great mendicant, a monk, and this butcher, who is a professional butcher. And you find some of the highest spiritual truths described by him. So you've come across many such great mystics in the Mahabharata literature, Vedic literature. For all practical appearances, were engaged in activities which normally we may not call sattvic. So this is a very interesting story you find. So, but then for a beginner in spiritual life, it is helpful to confine to certain types of food, certain external practices. That is true. That is very important. That is very necessary also. Moderation, some strict discipline. But then all these ultimately help us to develop the sattvic perspective. But sattvic perspective itself is not a result, is a product of these external practices. It helps us to control our mind, control our emotions, and ascend to higher levels of spiritual fitness. That's true. So, it is the internal perspective, our approach, the way our mind is working, that decides whether we are established Sattva-guna, Raja-guna, Tamo-guna. It's a very interesting point, yeah. So, any...
Swamiji, does Patanjali ever give explanation as to why we fundamentally separate from the Atma, ultimately engage in this dance?
Yeah.
His sutra to just return back to the Atma?
Yes. Patanjali's system borrows his philosophy from Sankhya. The Sankhyas really do not give a fundamental description. That's why the Sankhya and Yoga should be studied only with a Vedantic perspective. So Vedantic philosophers also agree the conclusions of Sankhya are not very rational. But the analysis of human mind and human character are accepted in Vedanta. Vedanta fully accepts the way Sankhyas and Yogas, philosophers, explain the mind, the buddhi, the intellect, indriya, sattva-guna, rajo-guna, tamo-guna. They are all highly rational and highly psychological. Even if you read today, you find you can always relate it to modern theories in psychology and philosophy. But the conclusion that, the Sankhya and Yoga, they both come to the conclusion that there are two fundamental, eternally different categories. One is Purusha, the other is Prakriti. And this Prakriti evolves and then produces all these 23 evolutes which constitute the universe, including our own mind. And all this is a play for Purusha. So that aspect is not fully acceptable to Vedanta. That's why even in India, you don't have many followers of Sankhya and Yoga systems, Yoga philosophical systems. But you can find millions all over the world in a way followers of Vedanta. Not only everywhere you find many great thinkers in Europe, America, everywhere you find they follow Vedanta. So Vedanta fully accepts the detailed analysis of the human mind and human characteristics that are found in the Sankhya and Yoga texts, but not the conclusions. Because finally they believe they are pluralists, they are dualists. That's the idea.
So then where in Vedanta's philosophy explains why we separate from the Atman to engage
In Vedanta, yeah, I tell you, if you come to Vedanta, you find we really are not separate. The separation, the idea that we are bound, that we are this body, all these are wrong perceptions. All these are due to wrong perceptions. Once we understand our true nature, it's like you are discovering that the necklace that you are searching outside is actually on your own neck. What you are searching outside is in your own pocket. What you are searching outside is your own self. So, the reality, the highest spiritual truth is within ourselves. But it so happens that we forget it. So it's like a person who has been asleep for a long time suddenly wakes up and opens his eyes. It's kind of self-discovery of our own truth. It is not a result of any knowledge or information that comes from outside. We self-discover our true nature. It's like coming back to our own home. It's not a knowledge that comes from outside. We are self-discovering our own true reality. That's a Vedantic perspective. That's why the great teachers like Shankaracharya do not consider Sankhya and Yoga systems as conclusive in themselves. But all Vedantins accept the intricate analysis of the human mind, human characteristics and tendencies and impressions in Sankhya and Yoga. The wonderful descriptions of the human mind you don't find anywhere else. See, if you read Patanjali's system, for example, he divides the mental world into 3 categories: the experiences and our reaction to those experiences, which can be either in the form of extreme aversion or extreme attachment. And depending upon this, our mind functions in so many ways, in 5 different ways. Sometimes in a state of total inertia, sometimes in a state of total restlessness, a terrible obsession, mutual conflicts, the slowly evolving higher and higher levels of concentration, and finally reaching the highest degree of concentration. So all these are explained. If you read this and if you look at observe the humanity, you find all this. Again, Sattva-guna, Rajo-guna, Tamo-guna is perfectly obvious to everyone. So, this intricate analysis, descriptions of the human mind and the functions of human mind are fully accepted. But not the conclusions. Though we study yoga here because the way yoga philosophy explains our mind is very appealing to our times. In fact, it will help you to relate to whatever experiences we are going through in our everyday life. You'll be able to see and understand people with whom you interact in your everyday life. And you'll be able to regulate your own interaction accordingly. That's why we took up this subject. And another purpose was to show that where yoga doesn't mean standing on your head. Yoga means, it is all right. Yoga, Patanjali doesn't reject yoga, physical exercises. But there is a higher dimension. One that is a beginning, that's very good. Yoga practice is very good. It helps you to remain physically and mentally in a state of stability and all that. But yoga system goes much deeper and reaches the spiritual dimension. That's another important purpose of dealing with this text. Yeah.
I mean, is it, I guess you'd say it's Maya?
Yeah.
Is God trying to challenge us? Or
Yeah.
what's the deal?
No, that's true.
Why is it so difficult?
Yes. Yeah, it's true. If we say if the divine Atman is everywhere, and then why don't we know that? Yeah. True. Actually, there is no question of our knowing. What happens when we remove the wrong perceptions, then we understand our true nature. Why should there be wrong perception? The question can be further asked. Why can't everyone understand that is Atman?
Is that our fault or is that God's fault?
Well, yes. I tell you, in fact, the idea of a personal creator God who arbitrarily decide what you should be doing, what you should not be doing, that idea is not the highest idea of God in Vedanta. What Vedanta does is, it looks around and it observes the way the world is going on, the way our own mental world is functioning, and then tracing the cause backward, trying to understand. That's why it is so rational and scientific. If you can say that God one day created this world, then it's very easy to do that. But what Vedanta does is, and in a way Sankhya and Yoga also do in their own ways, look around the world and see, if you analyze this world, billions of celestial entities, stars or planets, and the creation itself may have taken several billions of years. The earth is not the only thing in this world. If you just keep in mind the vastness, the complexity of the universe, you find this universe as such, it is not a permanent thing. Even if you believe the cosmos, the universe came into existence 13 billion years back, then one could ask the question, what was the 13 billion years before the world came into existence? It should be something else. So even the cosmos, even the universe is a relative thing which belongs to time, because it originated in time, exists in time, maybe 13 billion years, and may vanish after several billions of years. So in that case, what exactly is the reality behind this fleeting momentary in the sense, even the universe which exists for 13 billion years is momentary from Vedantic and Buddhist point of view. Momentary really means non-eternal, impermanent. Not that it means for a minute, but impermanent. So, what is the permanent eternal reality? So, Vedanta comes to the conclusion that reality is one supreme, inexplicable, indescribable, divine consciousness, which never came into existence because it always existed. And for that very reason, it never ceased to exist. Because to cease to exist, it should have had originated sometime in the past. So it never really was born, so it will never die. So that absolute reality is Brahman or Atman. As the inherent, immanent reality, it is called Atman. As the omnipresent reality, which is the foundation of the whole existence, it is called Brahman. So you find in Vedanta an attempt to trace the effect to its cause. Otherwise, things would be very easy. God creating the world and deciding what you should do, what you should not do, is the simplest thing that you can do. In fact, if that is true, then there are more questions. Why should this God create this miserable world and all these problems? Why can't everyone have visa, Medicare, insurance, everything? Why should there be so much of diversity in this world? Why can't everyone have plenty of intelligence, wealth, everyone? You remember, I quoted a Grand Inquisitor. Dostoevsky throws light into, is a new flash of light into Christian theological interpretation. Of course, I repeated a few times, but there are many who needs this repetition again. The Grand Inquisitor in Brothers Karamazov, the 5th book, 5th chapter you find. Jesus was going about making miracles. So the Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor, the Cardinal, he called this man who was going about healing sick people and making miracles, and had him brought into the prison and put him there, and midnight he comes to the prison and questions Jesus. Why have you come here? We are not with you, we are with him. You know, him means we are with the devil, with the Satan. We finished your work 1500 years back. In fact, the setting is placed in 1580. During the period of Spanish Inquisition. So the Cardinal, the Inquisitor says, the Grand Inquisitor says, we have finished all your work 1500 years back. And Jesus was crucified. You are doing all these wonderful things in your name. Now why do you come and disturb and meddle with all these things? A terrible thing. Now the point is, from Vedantic perspective, that Jesus is an eternal spiritual reality. And Jesus, the person, is a great saint who has realized the supreme truth. So he lived for us. He sacrificed everything for us. He is not a representative of one being that sits somewhere and creates this world. Then only this question, criticism could come. Here in Vedanta, what you are trying to do, you are trying to trace the origin of the universe from effect to cause. And from Vedantic perspective, all the great teachers of the world, whether Buddha, Jesus, Shankaracharya, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, all the great men, great women, they all realized this divine reality within themselves. And this realization of the presence of this divine reality within themselves enabled them to realize the presence of the same reality everywhere. So they could look upon the whole creation as their own spiritual fraternity. And in a way, according to Vedanta, all of us can reach that level. Not that we have reached, but we can reach. They all realize the presence of the divine within them. So too we can. And that should be our goal. Otherwise, the problem is, if a great spiritual person comes, you give him a place, a throne, you sit there, and you construct a prison wall around him in the form of a temple or a church. You sit there, don't disturb us. We'll come and worship you on a particular day and we'll do rituals. But don't. No, Vedanta says we all should strive to become like them. And we should try. That's Vedanta says. Now, Sankhya and Yoga do not go to that extent. Vedanta tells us that this ought to be our spiritual goal. To realize, to experience the presence of the divine within us, which also enables us to experience the same presence everywhere. And those who reach this goal, we call them saints, or prophets, or teachers. In different countries, in different cultures, in different civilizations, they come. So maybe the way they teach these great teachings may be different, the language, the parables, the imageries, but the real truth is the same. I think we can continue this discussion. We have already 10 minutes past the time. Thank you. You should continue the same discussion, take up the same topic in the next class. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Pramastu.